Chelsea are world champions. I know it sounds weird to say, right? But this is maybe the new normal. Every 4 years, we'll be saying this for club sides.
Yeah, going to be world champions for the next 4 years. They're probably already selling the shirts with the patches on in the club shop as well. It's probably got a premium on tickets to come to London and see the world club champions in action for the next 4 years. And we can scoff about it, but if you look at it as a football game and as a tournament, they deserve to win it as well. But it probably goes a bit deeper than that, you're going to tell me.
Well, I think so. When it comes to this final, there's no question. Paris Saint-Germain had the momentum. I think they were the clear favorites in this final. People can look at Chelsea's run to the final, look at the fact that obviously they lost in the group stage to Flamengo, were taken to extra time by Benfica, although frankly, I mean, they battered them and it was more like the delay and whatever. That was a bit weird, the way that game turned out. In the end, though, you have to win the 90 minutes. What came before doesn't really matter. And Chelsea came out of the gates so well, with so much energy, so much intensity. Maresca said afterwards, we came out strong. We knew we couldn't keep it up the whole game. And we scored the goals in sort of that first half hour that won the game for us.
Yeah, it was a total team performance, wasn't it? A couple of scares early on, and Sanchez, the goalkeeper, has got a lot of stick, and everybody's saying that Chelsea need a new world-class goalkeeper. I'm told was what do we call it? We don't call him superior player of the game, or whatever we call it these days, don't we? Man of the match in old school parlance. He had a brilliant game. They needed him early on as well. But Maresca, it was a total team performance. The players out there on the field, but also Maresca and the coaching staff as well, because from the start they were pushing them back. They weren't allowing Paris Saint-Germain to get the ball out. They were crowding them. They were smothering them. I thought Gusto was absolutely superb on the right-hand side, because every time they came down that right, he stopped it, and they're setting Chelsea away on the left-hand side. And Maresca was saying at the end of the game they were targeting Núñez, and maybe not necessarily him, but where they perceived the weakness to be. And most of the goals came from that side. Most of the chances came from that
Mendes.
side. Nuno Mendes, yeah.
Yeah. I think Maresca, a little tactical tweak, masterstroke. It is something we've seen before, but the way they executed it by playing Reece James in midfield, essentially you created a chain down that right-hand side with Malo Gusto, Cole Palmer, who was deployed wide right again, and sort of Reece in kind of that half space that had so many beneficial effects. It allowed Malo Gusto to get forward without being terrified of Kvicha sneaking in there, because Reece could cover for him. And it certainly, when Palmer came inside, you still had the option over on the right, when obviously you want Palmer to come inside. And I thought it worked tremendously well. And you're right about Malo Gusto. It's not just the first goal, but on the second goal, he doesn't actually touch the ball, but he makes that overlapping run, which allows Cole Palmer to do the little body fake, which Vitinha totally buys and creates a space for the second goal.
Yeah, because as you say, maybe he didn't get the ball on that occasion, but he had been getting it, going on those runs down the left-hand side. And that is Palmer's signature, isn't it? It's his calling card to just drop the right shoulder, come in on the left-hand side. And the guy doesn't hit the ball with velocity, but it's an art form, isn't it? The way that he just bends it around the goalkeeper, maybe uses the defender as well to block the keeper's view. And it's probably something Manchester City and Pep were saying they were working on the training ground in the morning, and then the players were out having a barbecue and family time in the afternoon. I'm getting the impression that Chelsea were doing double sessions when they weren't playing matches, because it was an absolute tactical masterclass.
Yeah, honestly, it feels like complete sour grapes when Pep says that. So the less said about that, the better. João Pedro adding a third. And again, I'm kind of stunned that this is a guy who wasn't even a Chelsea player 10 days ago, can come on and have such an impact. We're going to break this down further on the Gab and Juls podcast. I think there's a lot to look at for Paris Saint-Germain as well. Not that long ago, Don Hutchinson sat in your seat and said, well, there's maybe only 2 or 3 players that would in the world that would improve Paris Saint-Germain. We may revisit that a little bit, and also talk more about Chelsea, because this was not just this was an important win financially as well as from a sporting perspective. Rob, when I say this was important for Chelsea, and look, people say, oh, you're always bringing up Chelsea's finances and blah, blah, blah. No, it is important. Chelsea just got fined 31 million euros for breaching UEFA's financial guidelines. There's another, I think, 60-odd million suspended. They know they're facing this, and they're confident that they can make moves. And later on in the quick hits will tell you about how, like, hey, look, they raised sort of some 85 million euros over the weekend in Petrovic and Madueke. But this also brings financial relief as well, in excess of, it'll work out to be in excess of 100 million that they'll probably bring home with this, as will Paris Saint-Germain. It'll be close to that. So this is important because it will help them comply with rules coming forward and avoid further penalty. Obviously, it all depends. I certainly get the sense that when I look at this team, it feels so much better rounded and better put together than last season. You have options. It's not just Nico on his own up front. Now you have two other. And Mark Guiu fans out there. You have two other legitimate options at center forward. Mm-hmm. Nico, I think, can become an option on the left wing because he is right-footed and he's played there before, which I think is also important. Although obviously they got Jamie Gittins coming in. I feel like this will build confidence in Maresca further. And I think, and I'm sorry, maybe I say it because I like the guy, but I think he deserves a fair amount of credit.
Yeah, going back to chats that we've had when you've kindly invited me on here as the body double for Jules before last season. I think one of the first chats we had was what a good job Maresca did initially, that when he came in, he had a ton of players to deal with, that he sorted them out. He got the squad that he wanted, the pool of players that he wanted, and then the other
not just them, but João Felix too.
Yeah. But the guys that he didn't want, they were kind of moved on or asked to train elsewhere, and he had his pool of players. And then they've added one or two over the season, so they've had that. And then there's the other side of things, because football these days is played on the football field, but also it's very important with the politics as well. And if you suddenly get 100 million, whether it's dollars, euros, pounds, or whatever, suddenly there'll be somebody at the Stamford Bridge this morning sitting there with a large brandy and a big cigar with the weight of the world lifted off his shoulders because they have to balance the books. And that now means that they probably don't have to sell a couple of their promising youth players elsewhere.
Well, I think that'll the moving guys on, unless they feel they can make a contribution to the first 11 or will make a first contribution to the first 11 soon. I think that's still part of the business model. I mean, if you show up tomorrow with enough money for, say, Trevoh Chalobah, I think he's gone. When I think of like guys who Chelsea are just absolute untouchables, for a reasonable price. Obviously, everybody's his price. For Chelsea, I mean, it's still the usual suspects. Caicedo, who I thought was exceptional. Mm-hmm. Cole Palmer, obviously. Levi Colwill, who I think didn't have the best season, but I think there's so much ability there, and he's shown before what he can do. And I don't know that there's too many others beyond that. However, what it does do is it gives you a platform, and it gives you that flexibility. You can hold out for a little more, maybe rather than what we saw last year with Conor Gallagher for João Felix, rather than that kind of like accounting wizardry. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a young player we like. Maybe we send him to Strasbourg for a year or on loan somewhere else. So he's still our guy, and we can monitor him. And then if he goes to the next level, maybe he can contribute. Maybe we can get more for him. So I think from that perspective, it's important. What did you make of the fisticuffs at the end? The massive melee for a tournament where people didn't care. Supposedly we're just playing golf and barbecuing, as some people say. It looked to me like Paris Saint-Germain were quite angry, as were Chelsea.
Yeah, it was bizarre, wasn't it? Because it wasn't as if there were any kind of, during the game, any controversial moments, or Chelsea won it by a disputed goal, or there'd been any fisticuffs, as you say, during the game, and suddenly you get this kind of...
it did get a little tasty.
A little bit, but it's a final, though, isn't it? But it wasn't like... Occasionally when the players were arguing, you were seeing a handshake and they were getting up, and Hakimi, and there was a sportsmanship about it. But to see Luis Enrique go like that as well is bizarre, because he fizzes on the touchline. And when you see the picture at first, you think it's Donnarumma, don't you? And then apparently you see the pictures, and Luis Enrique has come like some kid on the playground and landed one, it appears, almost on the same square of the field where Donald Trump was going to be posing for a photo just a few minutes later.
We'll get to that in a minute. It did look to me like, I don't know, I think Luis Enrique, as did Maresca, obviously they're there. It looked like, you see them pulling players away, right? At one point, you see Maresca, he's kind of trying to calm things down, and then he sees Nico Jackson, who clearly has one of the shortest fuses on the team, coming out, and he just
where's
sprints
Nico? Where's
over
Nico?
to
Where's
him.
Nico?
Like, where is
There's
he?
a fight going on. Where is he?
But it looked, the way Luis Enrique got into João Pedro's face, I thought was totally inappropriate from him.
And I don't know what quite triggered it as well. You know, he'd had a great game and he got under the skin of the defenders and he'd been a nuisance. But in the centre of the field, have that kind of reaction.
Pull your own players away.
Yeah.
Leave the other, let the other team deal with the other team's players. And he gets into João Pedro's face. And you can see Donnarumma's coming in. Donnarumma's got the big frame. He's got the orange shirt. He's visible from the stratosphere. And you're right. It looked as if he's trying to get between them, and it looks as if it's Donnarumma who shoves him to the ground. No, instead it's Luis Enrique who whacks him. Yeah. And then obviously everybody assumes it's Donnarumma, and then Tosin, who's Chelsea's own heavyweight, comes out and he's like, "All right, you're a big guy, just filled one of our guys. Here I am to go," and whatever. In the end, it all got calmed
it maybe
down.
gives you an insight into the mentality of the two coaches on the day. The fact that Luis Enrique knew he was a beaten man, completely lost control of himself and maybe lost control of his team on the day. And Maresca, the picture you see at the end is Maresca taking Donnarumma away, putting an arm around him and getting him out of trouble as well. And it seems like he's in control of the situation. So maybe it just gives a little kind of insight into what happened during the whole course of the afternoon or the evening UK time.
Maybe, and this is a citation for old timers, but you can look this up on the web, thankfully. Maybe Luis Enrique was having flashbacks to the 1994 World Cup when he ran into Mauro Tassotti's fist and then posed afterwards with had some sort of bandage, some sort of coverage thing on his head. I don't know if he broke his jaw or something, but he looked like freaking Hannibal Lecter. That's how I choose to remember Luis Enrique.
And to be fair, and he had a bit of a history when it came to derby matches in the Clásico as well, with winding up the opposing fans when wearing a Barcelona shirt.
Especially when he used to play for the other team, which, is a bit of an issue there. But anyway, whatever. The man is a genius.
Chelsea won.
Luis Enrique. And well done. Well done, Chelsea. We're going to turn to Paris Saint-Germain in a minute, but I cannot not ask you about the trophy presentation. Two things stood out about this actual final. One is the playing of the U.S. anthem before the game. I've never seen the anthem of a host nation played at a football match, at a FIFA football match, unless obviously the host nation was actually playing. People say it's tradition before U.S. sporting events. I went to a bunch of Club World Cup games. I never heard it, but they did it for the final. Do you think we'll see this at the World Cup? Does it matter?
Yeah,
is it something people expect?
Unless it's the TV coverage I've been watching, maybe I've just been zoning in on the games just as they've been kicking off.
Or does zoning?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, if they do that 10-9-8 and come down to kick off. Okay, that's an American thing. I play college soccer or university soccer, and we used to have the national anthem, and I used to quite enjoy, the national anthem when I was playing US sports over there. But to have the US national anthem, okay, the president was in town inside the stadium, maybe that's the occasion. But to have a World Club Championship and not have the national anthems of the two countries as well, just seems a little bit odd to me. So you either have one or you have all three. But it was one of many things which was, let's say, diplomatically different about the Club World Cup.
So playing the anthem before sporting events, that's actually something which in the U.S., it's not something they've always done. It's something, I think it actually started at Yankee Stadium, and I think it was early post-war when they started doing it. What I think is weird is you just do it for the final. Mm-hmm. And again, maybe it's because the president was there. But you need to. But I think you need to explain this stuff. You need to say, all right. And I also think, crowds would go watch football in the U.S. or sophisticated.
Do you know what I would have done, Gab?
That they're not going to. People are going to say, oh, they're going to expect it. Like, no, I don't think they will expect it.
If you do it fair enough because the president is there, maybe we do it if the king was there in the UK. But let's ditch those player introductions before the game, which take an absolute age. The players look embarrassed. Do that, and then have a very short rendition of the two national anthems of the teams that are representing their country in the Club World Cup. There we go. Diplomatic.
There you go. The man fixes everything. But actually, the introductions were cut short this time because all the preamble before. Did they just do
last names, did they? No.
No. Before, you saw them kind of there were like 30 seconds before each player. They'd go into the tunnel and they'd strut around. It was almost like professional wrestling or UFC introductions. Yeah. Whereas this one, they didn't do that, if you noticed. They just came out, and that was supposed to be part of the program. They cut that short because the game was already kind of 10 minutes delayed with all the stuff that's going on. In the trophies presentation, now it's customary, obviously, the President of the United States and Gianni Infantino, President of FIFA, were together, as you'd expect, and they were greeting the players together with Todd Bowley representing Chelsea and Nasser representing Paris Saint-Germain, and they give out the medals and whatever. And then it looked as if Infantino and Trump wandered kind of into the stage where Chelsea were going to lift the trophy, and seemed like an unusual. It seemed as if nobody had briefed the president of the United States and the president of FIFA here over where he needed to go, which I find remarkable because anybody who's covered politicians, they're briefed right down. Normally, they're briefed right down to you take 5 steps this way, then you go here, then this is going to happen, that's going to happen. That seemed to catch people off guard.
I don't know how easy it is to actually brief Donald Trump. It must be possibly the most difficult job in the world after being the president of the United States. But yeah, it just looks a little bit of a mess, didn't it? And I now understand why. And I always thought it was quite awkward when you have major trophy presentations, when the captain goes over to the president of FIFA or UEFA or whatever, picks up the trophy, then brings it back to the players. And now I probably understand why they do that, just in case Donald Trump wants to photobomb you winning the World Cup Championship. But it did look, when you look at it and you look at it from a distance, it does look like they were trying to just kind of nudge him out, Mr. President, you may want to come this. And he was enjoying it. He was
but I don't think he expected to be in the picture. He just struck me as like he didn't know what was expected of him. I just genuinely don't think he was. I mean, I know people may be critical. It was just a weird, awkward moment for FIFA, from FIFA's perspective.
Yeah.
Like Johnny, if you're going to be looking after him, you need to look after him. You need to make sure.
But is this now a tradition, though? Is it Saudi next, when they do it next time in Saudi and the ruler comes on? Who's going to be brave enough to tell him that you can't be like Donald Trump?
You're jumping ahead to 2034. Next time isn't going to be Saudi. Next time is going to be Spain and Portugal and Morocco.
Oh, that's a lot of leaders to be in one photo.
And Argentina and Paraguay and Uruguay.
Wow.
Yeah, that's going to be a full house there.
You're the expert on this, aren't you?
Move over to Paris Saint-Germain. So Don Hutchinson sat in your chair not long ago, and he was swooning after the Paris Saint-Germain Bayern semifinal or quarterfinal. I mean, he said, how could you possibly improve this Paris Saint-Germain team? Mm-hmm. He says there's maybe 2 or 3 players in the world who might improve it. You could make a case for Mo Salah. You could make a case for whoever your favorite center back is, whether it's Saliba or Van Dijk or whatever. And to be fair, by the way, on that point, there was no William Pacho. There's a massive drop-off between William Pacho and Lucas Beraldo. Mm-hmm. A massive, massive drop-off. Lucas Hernandez, of course, suspended as well. Do you agree with that? Or does this kind of bring them down to earth a little bit?
Would it be too easy to say they just had an off day? I mean, they have been excellent. They've been sweeping aside major teams, Bayern and Real Madrid and Inter Milan, and scoring goals and looking sensational. And they are a brilliant team as well. But I think they were just outmaneuvered. It was a better day for Maresca. It was all of the Chelsea players were 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. And they had a collective day where they were probably all 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. Watching the game, I think it was the second half before I realised that Fabian Ruiz, who's a tremendous player and the heartbeat of the team, was actually on the field of play. And I think that was when he committed a foul. Dembele, there'd been talk of him, if they'd won it yesterday, maybe being a candidate for the Ballon d'Or. I didn't see him have a kick of the ball. There were players where the game just completely passed them by.
I could care less about the Ballon d'Or, as regular viewers know this, but there's a lot of people who do. And a lot of the voters are people who just tune in for finals and big games, and if they watch this, they're not going to vote for Dembele.
Could be the Palmer family. Cole Palmer could be doing us proud. He could be the World Player of the Year.
There you go. Yes, your nephew, Cole Palmer.
Yeah.
There's a striking resemblance.
That's why they got me in, yeah.
When I look at this, though, we can all point out how a lot of Paris Saint-Germain's big players contributed very little. Obviously, not just Dembele. Achraf Hakimi was totally stunted. Nuno Mendes had a really rough time, as we said. Kvicha might as well not have been on the pitch. What I will remind people of is Paris Saint-Germain, I think, are one of the 3 or 4 youngest teams in Europe, as are Chelsea. So you can legitimately expect more. You can legitimately expect growth from both of these two teams. But if you were Paris Saint-Germain, what positions do you strengthen? What do you do this summer? Because you don't want to mess with something that works, right?
No, I mean the strength of what they've done the last couple of years is they've got rid of a lot of the deadwood and the older players, the stars of the team. But maybe what they are missing, and I don't know the answer when it comes to a single name or a single player, is they maybe need somebody of experience who's been in a situation like that. Again, nobody's played in a World Club Championship before of that, but somebody who's played in a major World Cup match or played in the European Cup final.
Dembele being a world champion, not enough for you.
Yeah, but
Marquinhos and his million caps for Brazil, not enough for you.
Yeah, or Thiago Silva, somebody like that. Do you know what I mean? But somebody that when they turn to and they're struggling like that, and they get a grip of them and go, right, this is what we do. And I don't think they had anybody in the team. They're all players, as you say, at the peak years of their career, but maybe just somebody who's going to grab a few people and kind of, point them in the right direction. Donnarumma kind of does that, but he's behind the goal, isn't he?
And he also only has a year left in his contract. And they have a big call to make that we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
My final point on Paris Saint-Germain is just to remind people, January 22nd, Paris Saint-Germain against Manchester City in the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain go 2 goals down at home against Manchester City. It feels to me like everybody has kind of forgotten that. If they don't come back and win that game, which they did 4-2, but it was close. It was tight until the end. Gonzalo Ramos, I think, scored in injury time to give them the win. Then they get knocked out of the Champions League. Then there is no knockout round.
Yeah.
There's even a question of the great Luis Enrique experiment. It almost feels like one of those sliding doors moment. From that moment on, they won 17 of the next 19 games. One of the ones they didn't win was the Liverpool game at home, where with the late goal from Harvey Elliott, which, come on, Liverpool fans, statute of limitations is over. You will admit you were battered in that game as well, right? So it's pretty remarkable. That was your turning point for the better. Is this going to be the turning point for the worse?
No,
I
I think it was
so.
genuine. I think it was a bump in the road. I think it's a fantastic developing team. When you look at the bench as well, they've got loads of great young players there. Luis Enrique will have the summer off, head to the beach, maybe run a couple of marathons, cool his head as well. And then they will build for next season. Who they're going to sign to improve that team, I'm not sure.
It's difficult.
But they're not short of a bob or two either. But you say, if you'd said in January that the two best teams in Club World Football were going to be Chelsea and Paris Saint-Germain, as you say, for that Champions League run that they went on, you'd have thought we were absolutely crazy, wouldn't you?
Well, and also, it's also worth pointing out all the stuff about, teams are going to be tired late in the season, play too many games, blah, 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 blah. In the end, it was Paris Saint-Germain and Chelsea in the final, winners of the Conference League and winners of the Champions League, two teams that played a lot of games. All right, enough FIFA Club World Cup. How about some quick hits instead? Now that it's over, what are your thoughts on the competition? Jules and I have opined at length. I want to know what Rob Palmer thinks. Did football need this?
Do you know what? In the summer, I need my fix of football. We got the Women's Euros on at the moment. I'm enjoying that. So if I want to watch football, I've got that. And it has more than filled a gap for 2 or 3 weeks when I've had no other top-class football to watch. I think, yes, maybe there is a future for the best clubs in the world playing off against each other in some major tournament. But if it's the way that we do it for decades to come, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff to figure out. Yeah. But one thing I kind of feel like, as I said, I think conceptually this is a tremendous tournament. I think it's much needed. It should have been done a long time ago. We can debate why it happened now, how it happened now, the whole money side of it. But I also think critics of it can't have it both ways. They can't say, there should have been more of the best clubs. Why weren't Liverpool there? Why weren't Barcelona there? If you're going to have it just be a replica of the Champions League, that's one thing. But then say it, best clubs, more money, all about money. If you want it to be representative, I think something like this, where you only have 12 European clubs, is the way to go. We just accept it, and maybe we make a little less money. Hey, that's fine.
Yeah, it does. As you've discussed,
there's a sporting element.
Yeah, I think it just has been a little bit rushed, hasn't it? The way that they've done it, and it hasn't been thrown together. It has been a super production as well. When the FA Cup started, you read the history of the FA Cup, not all the teams entered it back in the day. The World Cup, the European Cup, which is everybody plays for now, the Champions League. They all started off, and they weren't particularly popular when they started, and this hasn't been universally popular, but in theory, it's a good idea, Gab.
Hey, first World Cup, Egypt, I believe, missed their boat connection. And so I'm not kidding. And so they never actually made it. And of course, your people snubbed the actual World Cup until 1950.
Yep.
And then when they played, they got their backsides handed to them by the United States. But that's another issue.
Gab, many thought this tournament was a test run for the real World Cup next summer. You were there. What lessons have been learned?
I think a lot of the things that hampered this, sort of the ticket sales, empty stadiums, whatever, those are going to be sorted. World Cup's not going to be an issue. They will have filled it. I do have a major issue, though, with the weather and the kickoff times. It's going to be less of an issue at the World Cup because if you look at what stadiums, particularly the ones in the West Coast, some of the ones in Canada, Monterrey as well, those are actually temperate climates. And then you've got 3 other stadiums in Dallas, Houston, and Atlanta, which have roofs on them. So that's climate controlled. But it seems pretty obvious that if you have to play in Kansas City, in Philadelphia, in New York, in places like this, you cannot have a kickoff at noon or at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It just can't happen. Miami, it's just going to be too hot. And I think you need to put the football first. If you have to have weird kickoff times, maybe even kickoff games at 10 o'clock at night, local time, I'm okay with it. It's a TV event anyway.
Interesting.
We got to enjoy a halftime show styled on the Super Bowl. Rob, maybe I'm a traditionalist. I don't mind Doja Cat, but I could have done without it, and I don't need to see Chris Martin again.
Yeah, I must admit.
You're more Doja Cat than Chris Martin, yeah?
Chris Martin was the only one that I recognised, actually, out of all the halftime. You obviously got all of the LPs and CDs of Doja Cat, but...
You're not into that?
No,
hey,
not
bitch,
at all.
I said what I said. I would rather be fake. No? Okay.
Still don't get it. And I also think as well that they're so tightly produced when they come on, these artists, and they're scared to actually be themselves. And it's like, yep, we've done our 3-minute set, roll on the next one, done the 3 minutes. And I don't think it showcases them well. The only time I've been to an NFL game the last couple of years, they had some country and western artist on that, and I love that in the NFL, but I don't think it's something, Gab, that translates to football. And I please don't have it at the World Cup finals next year, please not.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's necessary, put it that way. But if they do, I'm glad they didn't put it on the pitch, but they did it up in the stands.
I know, but then there was no safety net, which was giving me, putting the brightness on this one.
You thought Chris Martin was going to tumble? No.
FIFA met with representatives of the players' unions on the eve of the final to address some of the concerns of the player welfare, Gab. Did this do the trick?
No, in fact, it was kind of a trick in and of itself. So there's FIFPro, which is the International Players' Union. It's an umbrella organization which represents almost all the major player unions in the world, with the exception of Germany and Brazil, for different reasons. We can get into that at some other point. They're the ones who've taken a legal action against FIFA over this tournament. He didn't meet with them. He met with a bunch of other people. Some were former player union officials, like David Aganso from Spain. Others were with smaller unions that were unrecognized. And they said, players should have a 3-week rest period, and we should do this, and we should do that. And then, look, we have an agreement in principle with player unions. Yeah, but it's not the premier, it's not the most important player union, the one that's taking legal action, the one that represents almost all the major players who are going to be at the World Cup. That's who you got to worry about. So I thought there was some sleight of hand. They weren't even invited to the meeting, which I thought was kind of funny. All right, we're not done. We have more quick hits. According to multiple reports, Viktor Gyokeres is expected in London in the next few hours, as Arsenal have upped their offer to Sporting Lisbon to around 60 million euros plus 10 million euros in bonuses. Rob, money well spent.
Yeah, I think so. I think the one thing that can be improved with Arsenal is somebody grabbing a bucket full of goals for them next year. Gyokeres, good age, 27, 54 goals, 52 matches last season, 97 in 102 since joining them. He's gone up a level since he scored all those goals for Coventry. And I think he's one player who can potentially improve Arsenal next year and fill a position that they maybe don't have.
People know my view. I'm a big Kai Havertz guy, and I think all you needed to do was get a credible goal-scoring backup for him, and you would have been fine. You don't need to mess around with this dude.
Okay, sticking with Arsenal, they're ready to give Ethan Nwaneri a 4-year contract. Gab, how big is this?
I think it's really big because there's only a year left on his contract. And I think if I'm Ethan Nwaneri, I look around and they say, well, hang on a minute. I'm an attacking midfielder, right? And you have Odegaard, you have Rice. Now you bring in center forward. So Kai Havertz is going to be in the mix there too. There's Mikel Merino. I've played a little bit on the flank. But hey, look, our captain and best player, Bukayo Saka, plays there. Oh, and so does this other guy who we're going to talk about in the next quick hit, Noni Madueke too. Like, what's my pathway into the first team? And I think those are the questions more than the money, because the guy's going to make enough money. He will retire a very rich man. Mm-hmm. I think that's the main question, and I guess that's what Andrea Berta and Mikel Arteta will need to sell him on if he's going to sign this contract.
Interesting.
Even more Arsenal, since apparently many other clubs are just sitting around on their backsides. Nani Madueke apparently done at £52 million. Do you like this? Many Arsenal fans don't.
Yeah, the Arsenal fans are a little strange at times, aren't they? Like you say, they've got plenty of players in lots of positions. Maybe these days, with there being so many games, so many competitions, it is a squad game. Whether he, for me, walks straight into the Arsenal starting 11.
Well, not at right wing, he doesn't.
Yeah,
I can assure you that.
Or left wing, or number 10, or wherever, or whatever they've got for him. And 52 seems an awful lot of money for a player who hasn't really established himself at the very, very top level. But I don't know, maybe this is it. This is the future. Teams having 28 players and a squad, a shadow team of players, just in case the opening 11 can't do it week in, week out. UEFA's verdict is in and Crystal Palace are out of the Europa League, Gab. They'll appeal to CAS, but this feels unfair to many.
It feels unfair to me too, because, but not because the reason that they're in and then they're out is that they weren't able to put John Textor's shares into a blind trust. And by the time he sold it, there was a deadline of March 1st. March 1st was when they needed to get their house in order. And they said, well, we don't need to do that. We don't need to ask Textor to do that because we're not going to be in the Europa League next year. They didn't think they were going to win the FA Cup. That is the risk you run when you're in multi-club ownership. It feels doubly unfair because they were going to get in because Lyon weren't going to be there because they were punished by the DNCG in France, by the financial regulatory there, through some massive machination, which apparently involves the removal of John Textor. Lyon are back in Ligue 1 next season, which means they're back in the Europa League. And so Palace gets screwed. They have one last shot at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. It does feel unfair, but you know what? If you're engaged in multi-club ownership, and it's not just Textor, because David Blitzer also owns a bunch of other clubs too, this is the risk you run.
You've got to let the guys through the door in the first place. I guess you know what's going to happen in the future.
If Augsburg finish higher than Palace next season and Palace finish 6th, like, hey, we're in the Europa League, and Augsburg finish 5th in the Bundesliga, no, you're not. Not all sweetness and light for Paris Saint-Germain. Gigio Donnarumma has a year left on his contract and wants a new one. The club have offered him a 20 million euro package, including 6 million euros in bonuses. He's looking for 30 million guaranteed. As a former keeper, is a guy between the sticks worth that much? This is near Erling Haaland, Mo Salah type money.
Well, I would argue, and the goalkeepers union would argue, for my fellow brothers, that the goalkeeper is as important, if not more important, than Haaland. He can stop scoring goals, Haaland. The City can continue winning matches. If you've got a dodgy keeper, you're going to win nothing. And Donnarumma is certainly not a dodgy keeper. He's one of the very, very best in the world. He's got a chest full of medals as well. And actually, I think he's worth more than that, if I'm really, really honest. Yeah, because if he goes, you're going to have to spend double that to bring in a goalkeeper.
40 million, with 1 year left, they reckon that for 40 million euros, because you only have 1 year left of his contract, you can get him. He's 27 years old, 28 years old, still a young man.
He's still 10 years away from his peak, arguably, isn't he?
Arguably, 37 is the peak. All right, there you go. Goalkeepers Union has spoken.
Yep, I think he's going cheap. Let's go to the Women's Euros. France find themselves 2-1 down against the Netherlands, but storm back to win 5-2, Gab.
I love the way you're conditioned to call them the Netherlands.
He was beaten out of me when I did games for UEFA. I was told you have to do it, and I've got a lot of Dutch friends who call it Holland as well. But
yeah, so basically they went a goal down because Pavlova scored an absolute worldie. Honestly, rarely do you see a ball hit this hard as she hits it in the men's game or the women's game. And then the second one is an own goal, but then France wake up in the second half. Remember that they're France, and Delphine Cascarino and Katoto kind of steal the show once again. And by the way, Sandy Baltimore, little bit not as impressive as in the previous games, but man, she is a one woman show. One player show.
Yeah.
Worth the price of admission on her own. England, meanwhile, beat up Wales 6-1 to finish second in the group. Rob, they're turning it around after their disappointing opener.
Yeah, maybe the best thing that could have happened to the team was to lose that opening game. There's a lot of hype and a lot of publicity about the team, and obviously they've had a couple of great tournaments as well. And maybe losing the first game just gave Serena Wigman an opportunity to just get into the goals and say, come on, we've got to concentrate our minds then. And as you say, they absolutely floored Wales, didn't they?
Yeah, amazing what happens when you play Ella Toon in her correct position, and she makes all the difference.
Absolutely. England will face Sweden, who end up topping their group with a 4-1 win over Germany. Gab, few were expecting this.
Yeah. I mean, Germany can have been pretty stop-start. Obviously, they got a scare in their opener and whatnot against Poland, I think. But man, Sweden go a goal down. Brand scores straight away for Germany, and then they unleash the Blackstenius, who gets the equalizer. And then they just kept coming, and it felt like Germany kind of really lost their heads and their discipline. And now everything is a lot tougher for them going forward because they're going to take on France. U.S. President Donald J. Trump, who was at the final, of course, he joked in an interview with DAZN that he'd consider a mandate to officially make Americans call it football instead of soccer. Now, he was asked the question, and he made a joke out of it, which I think is the appropriate answer, because all these people who say it's football, not soccer, really, really annoy me. They really annoy me. And I sense a rant coming on, so I'm just going to shut up now, and I'll just get your view on it.
You're after some therapy, are you?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's quite strange. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I went over and took a scholarship to play football in the United States, and immediately I had to kind of hold myself back to say soccer. And occasionally, if I'm speaking to Americans, I think subconsciously I do call it soccer. It doesn't bother me as much as it does you. It doesn't bother me as much as it does people calling rugby union rugby when there's rugby league and rugby union. So I'm probably...
Because you're northern, and rugby league is big in the whole.
There's rugby league, and then there's rugby union.
Yes.
And there were two forms of rugby. So you have the rugby league, and you say rugby union. You don't just say rugby, meaning there's 15 public school boys go. So yeah, so that's where I come. So you've got into my psyche now, haven't you? It doesn't bother me as much.
Look,
I think he's probably joking as much as he said,
the
Gulf of America, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Gulf of America is the same kind of joke.
That,
you know what I mean?
On this point, I think we need the people who bug me, and it's some people it's people in this country who are not football fans. Mm-hmm. It's usually privately educated upper middle class people who make this point, and it's also a bunch of know-it-alls in the U.S. who are like, oh, it's football, not soccer. Okay, so let me educate you a little bit on where it comes from, right?
Okay.
What we know is football, and what other people know as rugby union, the original code, right? They started around the same time, and they were both called football. One was called rugby football. The other one was called association football.
Was it league or union though?
What?
Was it league or union rugby?
It was
so
union.
You started it now, haven't you?
It was union. League came a little bit later, but anyway. That's why it says RFU. Ever wonder why it's the Rugby Football Union and not just the Rugby Union that does like the Six Nations and nonsense like that? So the word soccer comes from association. And even in this country, and I've looked it up when I worked at the Times, you look at the Times in the 1980s, it was commonly called soccer. In the Times of London, one of the oldest papers in the world. Who owns the majority of the Premier League rights in this country? Is it a company called Sky? I believe so, right? Mm-hmm. You can answer. This is a podcast too.
I'm listening. Right. I'm going to make a point in a second to you. Carry on.
Yeah. Do they have a show called Soccer Saturday? Mm-hmm. I believe they do. It's not that freaking weird. Just get over it.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here.
Oh, please.
Over your shoulder, this is the Gab and Juls show, and it's on ESPN.
FC, Football Club. So what? You can use them interchangeably.
Okay.
No. Honestly, this is so stupidly elitist. I don't know. It just really bugs the crap. Like, I call it football. I do not call it soccer unless I'm talking to somebody who's not going to understand what I mean. But the freaking gall of people who try to appear clever by calling it football rather than soccer and make it a point when they don't know where the term comes from, and they don't know the history of the term in this country that actually invented the sport. This is what really bugs me. Sorry, rant over. I'm done.
You sure?
Yeah.
Can I have a glass of water for Gab?
I'm good.
Glass of water for Gab. Right, Gab. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter, meanwhile, isn't a fan, it appears, of the new FIFA World Order.
What, the one that took legal action against them and nearly sent him to prison?
Are you calm down now?
What?
Are you a little bit calmer?
I am calmer. Okay. He says, yes, we have lost football to Saudi Arabia. We offered to them and they took it. And surprisingly, there is no opposition to this within FIFA. Look, obviously it's sour grapes. Obviously I could say, oh, look, but FIFA became pretty much a kleptocracy and came about this close to being defined as a criminal organization by the FBI when you were in charge, right? You may have avoided criminal sanction. But a lot of the people you appointed and who worked for you did not. So many of them are in prison, in fact, or went to prison or were sentenced to prison. So, like, he obviously has an interest, and obviously not a fan of Gianni Infantino. There is a kernel of truth. It does appear like it's extremely autocratic. It does appear like there is little dissent within the ranks, other than Alexander Chefrin occasionally, and then occasionally goes away and shuts up. And I think this is something that isn't great for football. It doesn't feel like you necessarily have this dialogue. Could it be that everybody happens to agree with Johnny all the time? Maybe. But you wonder if other things aren't at play. And I think this is what Blatter's driving at. And this is something that FIFA, I think, need to think about. They should also need to think about that when they made rules, when they reformed FIFA after Blatter was deposed, they had a whole committee that passed laws and reorganized it in such a way that the president wouldn't be omnipotent. And you know who wrote those rules? Gianni Infantino, together with Victor Montagliani, CONCACAF president. And what's happened since then? I think those rules are getting either ignored or certainly they may
getting
be
a little blurry.
It's getting a little bit blurry. I'm not sure they're following the spirit of the law. Tottenham thought they had locked up Nottingham Forest midfielder Morgan Gibbs-White after triggering his £60 million release clause, though Forest reportedly believes Spurs made an illegal approach. We'll get to that, but is he what they need?
Yeah, I'd argue he would. I kind of tease my Spurs friends and saying that they tend to buy players who've been good elsewhere, and maybe they don't get the best of them.
Better than signing players who've been bad elsewhere?
Yeah, but what they do, they buy them after their peak years. And then they've got, he's been a good player. Then they come to Spurs and they have, I would argue, they've had an easy life at Spurs and don't play Richarlison, maybe Maddison as well. But I think Morgan Gibbs-White is a player who's still getting better. He's a potential England international. He has played for England, probably will play for England as well. 60 million's a lot, but 60 million and a penny gets his trigger release clause to take him to Tottenham. So for me, if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be very encouraged by that.
So I find this interesting because they're also signing Kudus, right? Mm-hmm. We can debate Kudus' best position, but it is again sort of number 10 forwardy type situation, right? Maddison, I mean, maybe he wants to turn him into a deep lying playmaker, but he's kind of a number 10 too, right? And Kulusevski's kind of a number 10 as well. And I am not going to question Thomas Frank, but I wonder, where does this all fit together? And what does it mean? Because they also have a bunch of gifted young wingers. And Brendan Johnson, Odebear's a guy I really, really like. And obviously Solanke and Tell up front, right? So how do all these, does this mean people are leaving? Oh, and of course, the captain, Hong-Min Son, and extended his contract.
Yeah. Well, you would imagine, given the financial fair play, whatever we want to call it at the moment, that they're going to have to shed a few as well. But he's come in and he's kept very quiet. He's a very diplomatic fellow, isn't he, Thomas Frank? But the fact that he's bringing some in probably means that there's going to be a few hangers in the changing room.
It's just odd to me that you would strengthen those positions rather than, I don't know, I would have thought central midfield. Maybe there was more room for an upgrade there, but...
Yeah, I just think he strengthens. He's a top 5 player, and I don't think Spurs have got a history of signing top 5 players, and I think he is.
So this business with the release clause, I think this is really stupid. And even though it is my friend Mr. Marinakis who supposedly is bent out of shape over this, even though I think his Nottingham Forest shares are in a blind trust, if I'm not mistaken. So officially, he's not really involved with the team. Now. So players put these clauses in the contract. There was a case years ago, I think, with Luis Suarez, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it the Arsenal one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where, if a bid higher than such and such comes in, you have to sell. But you're not allowed to ever tell anybody that the clause is there.
Yeah.
This is so stupid because clubs are going to find out.
Yeah. You imagine any good agent is going to be maybe having a chat at the private club with the people that represent the club.
So what's the point of this? And if you agree to a £60 million clause, it's presumably because you're comfortable letting him go for $60 million.
Yeah, it's all game of footballing poker these days, isn't it? And isn't it supposed to be if it's 60 million, then you have to pay the 60 million up front and not pay it in stages? So it's probably just public nonsense. Political bartering. Right, back to the Euros, Gab. Spain beat Italy 3-1 on Friday, which means that both teams advance. They're the outstanding side in the tournament, would we say, Gab?
Yeah. Look, obviously, I watched this game. I was curious to what Italy could do. I was disappointed with them, really disappointed with their performance against Portugal. They did well. They hit the woodwork. took the lead. They're hanging in there, and then and Spain, they took their foot off. They were already qualified. They made some changes, and then in the second half, Spain just kind of go to the next level, and you realize they are. I think they're far and away better than anybody else. Doesn't mean that they will definitely win the tournament.
The Paris Saint-Germain of the Euros, yeah.
No, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, yeah, France or England on a good day, I think, can trip up Spain, but they are the clear favorites. They'll be playing Switzerland, who are not particularly good. Italy, on the other hand, get to play Norway, who player for player, pound for pound, are a good side, but never quite as good as the sum of their parts. So I don't know. I'm hoping in an upset and seeing Italy in the semifinal. By the way, fun fact about the Italy coach, Soncin, Andrea Soncin, I think is his name, a former Serie A player. He got so emotional after Italy qualified that he said, "This is the greatest day of my career." And I'm like, really? You were a professional player for many years and stuff, and like after a game in which you lost 3-1, this is the greatest day of your career? He was sweet. He looks a little bit like Arne Slot, another member of the shaven-headed fraternity. Georgia Petrovic was Player of the Year at Strasbourg last season. Strasbourg, of course, who nearly qualified for the Champions League, but then Omabidele gave a penalty away, which then allowed Lyon to leapfrog them in the table. Omabidele, some people have pointed out, on loan from Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest beneficiaries. Sorry, Palace fans.
There's a web here, isn't there?
There is a web here that's got Palace fans all fired up. But anyway, Petrovic had a really good season at Strasbourg. Chelsea have $1 billion goalkeepers. They have let him go to Bournemouth for $25 million. You're the keeper expert. Is this good business? Is he a good keeper? We saw him in the Premier League 2 years ago.
Yeah, if I'm truthful, I didn't see a great deal of him at Chelsea, and when he played for Chelsea, he didn't have the greatest of games, but to sign for Chelsea, to be the Serbian number one, 25 years of age, and Bournemouth are the kind of club that spend their money very wisely, don't they? They don't. 25 million seems a lot of money for a club like Bournemouth, but they've got an international keeper who's been good enough to sign for Chelsea in the first place, and clearly last year was he player of the season at Strasbourg as well. So though I've not seen enough of him, from what I read and from what I've seen in YouTube highlights, he does look like a top keeper, and that they very rarely make mistakes when they sign players, Bournemouth.
And I thought when he played for Chelsea, even though he had some howlers, I thought he was better than Robert Sanchez.
Cool. Napoli are waiting on the Viktor Osimhen deal, but in the meantime, they've picked up Sam Bukema from Bologna. Your thoughts, Gab?
Okay, I got to address Osimhen first because we told you the deal was done. There is an agreement, but they haven't agreed on the payment terms. Apparently, Galatasaray want to say, they're like, we'll pay you $40 million now and then $35 million over time. And then Napoli says, everything up front. They're going to have to meet in the middle at some point. Still hugely disappointed that Viktor Osimhen isn't signing for a club in the Big Five leagues where he deserves to be. But whatever. Sam Bukema, I think it's a good signing, 30-odd million. He had a tremendous year last year, Holland International. And Napoli desperately need depth at the back because Rahmani ain't going to play every single minute of every single game like last year, and Buongiorno's had his injuries. And, of course, now you've got more optionality in terms of playing a back three that Antonio Conte wants to play. Jordan Henderson to Brentford on a free transfer is all done. Do you like this? He hopes it will ensure he's on the plane to the 2026 World Cup. And I am asking you this question. Jules addressed this when he left Ajax on a free. Jules, not a big fan of Jordan Henderson, the player, as a person notwithstanding. So I'm hoping you like Jordan Henderson more, and we'll say nice things about what he can bring to Brentford.
He's one of those guys, when he first signed for Liverpool, I wondered what he brought to the team. When you see him on the television, fans maybe didn't appreciate him. Then you go see him in person and you watch him, and whenever the ball is in play, he's always in a triangle. Not always the pass that you want to make. If there's a throw-in, he's always one of the options. And he's busy. He's also very vocal as well. So you probably have to go to a game and watch him for 90 minutes to get a full appreciation, which maybe for the first year at Liverpool I didn't see. But he was very important to Liverpool's success. He's a great pro. And Brentford, again, another team that very rarely do bad deals. That they brought Christian Eriksen back, didn't they? What a great job he did for them. Henderson might be the modern day Eriksen, and they get somebody in that leader to look to, and the England captain for 2026 on a free transfer. What a bargain! It's
funny because obviously Brentford and Brighton, they often get lumped in together about they're so clever with their scouting and look their data, blah blah blah. But both teams like to have an old guy who's been there, done that, hanging around. No, but think about it. Like, we saw it with Lallana, we saw it with Milner, Welbeck's not young either at Brighton. Here with these guys, we saw it with Ericsson, we saw it with freaking Ben Mee. Shows up there, and I thought, what's he doing here? So it's counterintuitive, but they see the value in experience too. They're not just a bunch of nerds going on about data and youth.
Yeah, good point. Young manager, and an old captain as well. Gab, you love your texter time. He had parting words for the Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parish.
Okay, this is the last one I get to do this season, so I'll just get on with it. It's time! It's time! It's texter time! There you go. Yeah, so to his credit, he gave a long interview on TalkSport in this country where he addressed a whole bunch of things, including the fact that he was a Manchester City fan since well before the Emiratis bought in. So who did Palace beat in the FA Cup final? I wonder if he was more 20. And he said, like, the minute that they won, he's like, uh-oh, we're in trouble now. And yeah, sure. But it's interesting because obviously by now everybody knows that the weird deal he had where he owned something like close to just over 45% of Crystal Palace, but he only had 25% of the shares. And the three other owners who had 25%, David Blitzer, Joshua Harris, and Steve Parish's group, they would kind of gang up on him. Not gang up, but they always seemed to agree. And he was always kind of left out in the cold. So one of the disagreements, something he said Parish's ambition every year, I think, is to avoid relegation, whereas our ambition is to climb the table. I'm not going to disagree with him, and I've had my run-ins with Parish, so has Jules, even more so than me in the past, but I think Parish comes at it from a different angle. Parish wants to be a good steward for Crystal Palace. He wants Crystal Palace to continue existing as a football club. Yeah. He's not deluded that Crystal Palace are going to turn into Barcelona or Manchester City or whatever. So that's what he wants. You kind of feel that John Texter is a little bit happier to gamble, right? Look at what happened.
It looks like that, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, look at what happened.
He's taken a few gambles the last couple of years.
Look at what happened with Botafogo and their unpaid debts to MLS clubs. So, yeah, it doesn't really seem to be like, these owners are on the same page. And so that's probably why it's a good thing that John Texter has moved on. Although, again, I still wonder, is he going to have any say at all at Lyon? And if he's lost Palace and he's lost Lyon, his Eagle Football Group, does it just consist of Molenbeek?
I know we're having a break for the summer. Believe me, come back in August. There will still be texted time for you.
I hope so. JT, don't leave us. Andy Carroll is back on these shores at 36 years young. And after a stint at Bordeaux. He's joining Dagenham and Redbridge, who, as I learned today, and you learned today, apparently have a Qatari owner.
Yeah, you broke that when you threw that one at me. I think they've been owned for 2 days by the Qatari owner as well.
And by the way, not every Qatari is rich. Not every Qatari is a relative of the Emir. Right? We can agree on that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But I guess you've got to be pretty wealthy to buy Dagenham and Redbridge.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they're very expensive.
Well, I think they've had US owners in the last couple of years as well, and it seems to be swapping and changing hands. It's a lovely field out there that they play, a nice pitch that they play on as well. It's one of those clubs that's got a lot of history behind it as well. The Daggers and Andy Carroll were talking about. Every time you see him on the telly, he looks a little bit heavy, but when I saw him interviewed on Sky Television, I realised he's just grown a very big kind of Bordeaux-like beard, I guess, and he's going to drag the fans in there, isn't he?
Does he give off Cantona vibes at this age?
Let's not go there. But he's a good signing. He's going to be a headline signing. 36 as well. He's going to get the fans in there, and no non-league defender is going to fancy a Saturday afternoon in the company of Andy Carroll. Well, Milan are hoping to sign fullback Archie Brown from Ghent, Gab. Not only did they lose out to Fenerbahce, I love this, they got trolled too.
Yes, and first of all, you and Archie Brown have something in common, I believe.
God. What's that?
Weren't you at Derby County?
Yeah. Did he get released by Derby as well? Was he put on the scrap heap by
I don't
Derby?
know if he was released by Derby, but he certainly went through the youth academy there. I think actually, and then he went to Lausanne. Maybe Dave Brailsford and Ratcliffe, who we haven't mentioned yet on the show. Maybe they were involved in him joining Lausanne. I don't know, but he's turned into a very good.
It's an amazing story.
fullback.
The way has turned it around, isn't it? To go from Derby to go, was it Belgium he went to, and now
with Derby, Lausanne, and then Ghent, and now Fenerbahce. Now Milan thought they had him. I think there's a release clause. It was something like 10 million. It's not a lot of money. In the end, Fenerbahce pulled ahead of him, and so Fenerbahce decided to he decided to release this video of him kind of on the plane, and he's on his way to Italy. He says like, "Oh, let's change the channel and stuff," and he opts for kebabs instead of pizza. I need to remind them, by the way, pizza has nothing to do with Milan. Milan's my city. Pizza's not part of our culture. So I don't really get the references. We have lots of delicious foods in Milan that you could have used. My message to the Fenerbahce social media manager, but it was very clever. And yeah, and he gets to be coached by Jose Mourinho, fulfilling a childhood dream, no doubt.
Absolutely. Who'd have thought that when he got released by Derby.
Given their exertions in the Club World Cup, Real Madrid asked La Liga to postpone their opener against Osasuna. And given how much love there is between Javier Tebas and Florentino Perez, I'm not really surprised. The answer was a no.
Yeah, it's a crazy one, isn't it? I mean, I've done Spanish football for the last 30 years, and they're not quick when it comes to confirming what days the game's going to be kicking off on. But strangely, for the first weekend, they've said to Real Madrid, no, you have to play on the first weekend of the season. I think they've given them a little bit of dispensation that they don't have to play on the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, the Monday. And I think they're playing against Osasuna on the Tuesday, who strangely didn't seem to have been asked what their views were on when they wanted to play their first game.
The summer off. Apparently what he said was, I believe Real Madrid will have 20 days to rest instead of 21, and no other leagues like the Premier League for Chelsea or the French League for Paris Saint-Germain are changing games. So why should we? So speaketh the Tebas.
Canadian forward Olivia Smith has become the first £1 million player when she joined Arsenal from Liverpool this weekend. Gab, the Gunners are throwing money around in the women's game too.
They are. Now, £1 million, it's a round number. So, I think somebody else was forget who it was the first $1 million player, and you had the first €1 million player, who may have been Naomi Germa, who of course was the world record transfer when she moved from San Diego Wave to Chelsea. I think it was last January.
Yep.
Now it's Olivia Smith. She's only 20 years old, an up-and-comer. Arsenal clearly, happy to throw the money around. I wouldn't get too worked up by transfer fees in the women's game. Obviously, still dwarfed by the men's game. I think what's more important when this money gets thrown around is that this money then gets reinvested. Hopefully, Liverpool use this money not just on players, but on continuing to improve conditions for their women's team and strengthen the women's team and try to build it up.
Yeah, I think their conditions are good. They just don't have a coach at Liverpool at the moment, I think, don't they?
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah. But educate me more. Why don't they have a coach?
I think Matt Beard, I think it's his name. I think he went last year, and I think they're waiting to approach this talk of Taylor going there as well. So I think Liverpool, what would they say? They're in a transitional stage.
Transitional. Speaking of transitions, you know, the guy's name is Matt Beard. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with the band ZZ Top?
I have heard of their music, yes.
Did you know that there's 3 members? 2 of them have big beards, and the one guy who's clean-shaven, his name is Frank Beard. But he did not have a beard.
An education every time.